So we're gonna get into this book right here. Wasn't easy to find. The first thing is you gotta know it existed, you gotta know the name, then you gotta get your hands on it. I was able to find a hard copy through Amazon and I purchased it thanks to the Patreon supporters for that. I'm able to have the resources to get books like this. I scanned it and I shared it in my Patreon page for my patrons. This book is called Symbols of Our Celto-Saxon Heritage by W.H. Bennett, forward by L.G. Pine. Says here, Chapter 1, an introduction. Let us now praise famous men and our fathers that begot us. Ecclesiasticus 44:1. Ages after the above admonition was written, Lord Macaulay carried this theme a little further when he said, a people which take no pride in the noble achievements of remote ancestors will never achieve anything worthy to be remembered with pride by remote descendants. Today, when we see everything which has come to us from the past, including pride in the achievements of our ancestors, being denigrated or discarded, perhaps we should also note a sobering thought voiced by the American poet Carl Sandburg. When a nation goes down, or a society perishes, one condition may always be found. They forgot where they came from. Okay? So don't ever forget where you came from. Could it be that this is the underlying cause of the ever-increasing troubles and confusion now plaguing the peoples of the Celto-Saxondom? Have we forgotten where we came from? And have we thereby lost all sense of direction and of where we are going? If so, should we not take some warning from the words of the philosopher George Santayana when he said, those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it? Must we relive the struggles and repeat the sacrifices made by our ancestors in the past because we have forgotten who they were and what they did? Because we have forgotten the history of our race and lessons it has for us in these troubled days? Or as was said by Stevens recently in the Covenant Message, centuries of history have gone into making the very circumstances in which we now find ourselves. It can never be stressed too often that there is a positive need today for all who yet retain a glimmer of light to remember the things of the past, for only by recalling these to our mind's eye can we hope against all odds to remain free of the intrigue which is slowly but surely gaining control of the minds of men. With this in mind, let us do a little delving into the past. Chapter 2, the symbols of our heritage. Did you ever wonder where nations get their emblems and coats of arms? Why the lion and the unicorn hold such a prominent place in British heraldry? And why the lion in the royal arms has a crown and the unicorn has not? Do you know the origin and significance of the Irish harp, the red lion of Scotland, the red hand of Ulster, the arms of the Westminster, and the 12 jewels on the crown of St. Edward? And what of the emblems of the United States, who first used the eagle, the olive branch, a cloud, and a number of arrows as emblems? And what is the significance of the sun, the moon, and the 13 stars on the Great Seal and on the President's flag? Then there are the ancient emblems of the Netherlands. Why do they also have the lion, in some provinces the unicorn, as well as a ship with a lion at the helm? What is the origin of the man in the heraldry of Greece, Denmark, Iceland, and the Netherlands, and some of the Scottish clans? From whence came the white horse of Lithuania and Westphalia and the lions of Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Finland, Belgium, and Luxembourg? Are you aware that these and many other emblems of Britain the United States, and other Celto-Saxon nations are identical with the tribal, national, and royal emblems of ancient Israel? Are you? Did you know that? Yet this relationship between the emblems of ancient Israel and those of the Celto-Saxon peoples of today is a fact which is based on irrefutable evidence. It can be denied only by those who refuse to examine the evidence or who haven't examined it, deliberately reject what their own eyes see. All right? This is undisputable, irrefutable. Don't practice cognitive dissonance. It's more than just Bible stories. We're talking about a lineage of people, a chosen people. Why then do we use the emblems and symbols of this ancient and long lost people? And how did they come to us? Is our use of them just a coincidence? Or do they have a meaning for us in these dark and troubled days? Continuing the book Symbols of Our Celto-Saxon Heritage by W.H. Bennett, Chapter 3, it says here the purpose of heraldic emblems. Long ago, someone said that one picture is worth 1,000 words. This statement is undoubtedly true, for an idea expressed in a picture of symbol can be understood in any age, by people of any language, and even by those who cannot read. Further, it will be understood instantly, whereas the hearing or reading of words takes time. Emblems are also used commercially in many other ways. Ships and mercantile establishments display the flags of their owners. Railways and airlines have emblems, manufacturers have trademarks, banks and public corporations have crests or coat of arms, and ranchers brand their cattle. Here too, though these emblems do have an advertising value, their primary purpose is identification. This use of emblems and symbols as a means of identification is both ancient and worldwide. From the most ancient times, emblems have been used by families, clans, tribes, cities, nations, and by organizations of various kinds, both national and international. Thus, we have family crests, coats of arms, clan and tribal emblems, national emblems and flags, religious symbols, church emblems, lodge and society emblems, tartans, totems, and many others. The right to use these emblems was jealously guarded as it passed from generation to generation, and rarely, if ever, was the emblem of one family or tribe adopted by another. Because of this, our courts have long recognized the importance of emblems in tracing heirs and identifying families. This is particularly important in the case of those who, in the course of many centuries, and by change of name, language, or location, have lost all knowledge of their origin. In view of this fact, one wonders why historians, and especially the ethnologists, have paid so little attention to heraldic emblems in their attempts to record the history and movements of the peoples of Europe, and particularly of those who settled in the Northwest and the British Isles. Had they turned to heraldic emblems as a source of knowledge, the early history of Europe would be well known as that of Babylon, Egypt, or Greece, and the British people would long ago have abandoned the false and rather naive belief that their history began with the coming of the Romans. All right, that's the hijack, you see? History in the British Isles didn't begin with the Romans, okay? There's a long history there. It's part of the real old world. As we consider this strange omission, one gets the feeling that some powerful force has long been discouraging and even obstructing this line of research, all right? There's gatekeepers. They've been holding this back. Perhaps for fear we might find out who we are, all right? So remember who was sent over here? Hundreds of thousands, indentured servants. And who's these original people of the Isles? Where were they coming from? The original promised land. In any event, it is in this field that we find conclusive evidence of the Israelitish origin of the Celto-Saxon peoples, all right? Israelitish, another author, another book. If you do the research, if you study the emblems, you study the genealogy, the history, the legends, it's going to tell you who these people are. Though generally unrecognized, it is nevertheless an indisputable fact that the basic heraldic emblems of Britain, Ireland, The United States, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Iceland, the Netherlands, and several related nations are identical with those of ancient Israel. Further, in the case of Britain and the United States, we have no others. For with the single exception of the Welsh dragon, which was not the emblem of the ancient Britons, every national emblem of Britain and the United States is an Israel emblem, okay? It comes from Israel, the 12 tribes, the sons of Jacob. That many of these emblems appear in the heraldry of widely separated sections of the Celto-Saxon people. One example of this is the use of the lion by all of them except Iceland and the United States. Another is the use of a man in the national or provincial arms of Denmark, Greece, Iceland, Sweden, Lapland, the Netherlands, and also in the arms of some of the chieftains of the Scottish clans. A White House appears in the arms of places as far apart as Kent and England, Lithuania, Denmark, and Greece, and a horn in municipal or family arms in England, Scotland, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Denmark. This use of these and many other emblems in the arms of such widely separated branches of the Celto-Saxon people cannot be the result of chance or even the heraldic adoption. There are too many of them and they have been in use by these people too long for that to be possible. Consequently, the only logical explanation is that these are hereditary emblems which have come down from the past and that the people now using them, though separated by language, nationality, and distance, have a common origin. As the very purpose of heraldic emblems is to provide continuing evidence of family, tribal, and racial identity from generation to generation, it follows that the peoples and nations today, whose emblems are, and for ages have been, the emblems of Israel, must be the continuation of that ancient people. Consequently, as it is a demonstrable fact that the emblems of the Celto-Saxon peoples and nations are the emblems of ancient Israel, we must conclude that the people known today as Celto-Saxons are the descendants of the Israel people whose early history is recorded in the Bible, all right? So we do have to dodge the hijack a little bit with that. You know, we're talking about a lot of years ago, all right? And then we're talking about modern people. It must be, well, remember what happened during colonization. But when it comes to these emblems, the original people who created it, the original people they were calling Celto-Saxon, yeah, these were descendants of Israelites. There are, of course, other ways of proving our Israelitish identity. But in this long neglected field of heraldic emblems itself, we have conclusive and irrefutable proof that the Celto-Saxon peoples are the continuation of Hawad's servant race and nation Israel, that they are the Israel of Bible history and prophecy. Whether so recognized or not, this identification is the basic purpose of our heraldic emblems. This book is called Symbols of Our Celto-Saxon Heritage by W.H. Bennett. We'll continue in Chapter 6, says here the Tribal Emblems, Part 1. We are often told that heraldry and the use of heraldic emblems came into the use about the time of the Crusades. It is said that knights in armor were unable to distinguish friend from foe in battle, and that consequently they began to put a mark or representation of some animal or other object on their shields and banners, so that they could be recognized. That heraldic devices of various kinds were used for this purpose and later for family and corporate identification is undoubtedly true, and that many of them first came into the use about the time of the Crusades, or even later, is also true. But to say that this was the beginning of the use of family and national emblems is an error, okay? It wasn't when it started. People had the emblems since ancient times, all right? That went back, it says here, at least 3,000 years. An official booklet issued recently by the United States government and entitled Our Flag says, heraldry is as old as the human race, and the carrying of banners has been the habit of nations since the beginning of time. The banners of the Roman legions and the emblem called Britannia were certainly in use long before the Crusades. In the legends and on works of art in ancient Greece, we have record of the emblems used by the leaders on both sides in the Trojan War, And when we turn to the Bible, we find that each of the 12 tribes of Israel had an emblem, and that by Hawa's command, these were in regular use during the 40 years of Israel's wandering following the Exodus from Egypt, where every man of the children of Israel shall pitch his own standard and the ensign of their father's house. All right, so we belly flop a little bit more ahead. It says here, so turning first to Genesis 49, let us see what animals, objects, or characteristics are mentioned by Jacob and blessing each of his sons, and then to Deuteronomy 33 for the items added by Moses. All right, so, dodge the hijack with the images, but, these are in general the emblems. And this one is Reuben. Jacob's eldest son was named Reuben, and in blessing him, Jacob said, as we read in Genesis 49, Reuben, thou art my firstborn, my might, and the beginning of my strength, the excellency of dignity, and the excellency of power, unstable as water. Thou shalt not excel, because thou wantest up to thy father's bed. Then defilest thou. He went up to my couch. In this description of Reuben, 2 points stand out. He was primarily a man, strong and evidently handsome in a physical sense, but sensual and weak morally. Further, his nature was changeable, so much that Jacob declared him to be unstable as water. Thus, Reuben is pictured as a man and also as a body of water, right? You guys get it? So, consequently, Reuben's emblems were first a man, then some wavy lines or bars representing a body of waters. These then became the emblems of the family, later of the tribe descended from him. Right here we have the emblems of Simeon, the tribe of Simeon. You see, castle and the sword. Simeon and Levi are dealt with together in their father's blessing. And in his description of their characters, however, for reasons which will be explained later, the object mentioned in connection with them applies only to Simeon. Of them, Jacob said, as recorded in verses 5-7, Simeon and Levi are brethren. Instruments of cruelty are in their habitations. In their anger they slew a man. Here we should note that the marginal rendering of the words instruments of cruelty reads, their swords are weapons of violence. All right? So they were constantly at war, these people. We should also know that in the record of their slaying of the man mentioned above, we read, Simeon and Levi took each man his sword and came upon the city boldly and slew all the males. And they slew Hamor and Sheshem, his son, with the edge of the sword. Thus, the object mentioned in connection with Simeon and Levi, and which later became the emblem of Simeon only, was a sword. An interesting fact regarding Simeon's emblem is that some Jewish authorities show it as a fortified, towered, or turreted gate of a castle or walled city. While no such object is mentioned by either Jacob or Moses in their blessings of the tribes, nevertheless, the events recorded in Genesis 34, and especially the capture of the walled city of Shalem by Simeon and Levi, as recorded in verse 25, clearly establish a relationship between a city gate and Simeon and Levi. All cities and towns had walls in those days, and of necessity this wall would have a fortified gate. Thus, to commemorate the capture of this city, a fortified, turreted, and towered gate became an emblem of Simeon and Levi, and later of Simeon only. It says here, Judah, right? Now we got the lion, right? The 3 lions, secondary emblem. As we read Jacob's blessing of his 4th son, Judah, we see that he is given a special blessing in that from among his descendants is to come the future royal house of Israel's nation. In this blessing, he is likened or related to 4 things, as we read in verses 9-11. Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, thou art gone up. He stood down. He couched as a lion, and as an old lion who shall rouse him up. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh come. Binding his fowl until the vine, and his ass cold until the choice vine. He washed his garments in wine, and his clothes in the blood of grapes. Here we see that Judah is declared to be the lion's whelp, and in the same verse he is likened to a lion twice more. Thus Judah is likened to a lion and also to 3 lions. Then in the next verse, he is stated to be in possession of his scepter, all right, the 3 lion emblem. Finally, he is associated with a grapevine. All right, so you got the other emblems, the scepter and the grapevine, which is also Judah, as they're telling you. As you guys can see, the secondary emblem. Consequently, these 4 devices, a lion, 3 lions, a scepter, and a grapevine became the emblems of Judah and of his descendants, the tribe of Judah. Alright? You guys see that? Now you know. Now we got these 2 other ones. Now we got Dan, right? The tribe of Dan. Primary emblem, the snake, right? And then we got secondary emblem, a horse. In considering the blessing of Dan, we see that he is likened to 2 objects. These are stated in verse 17, where we read, Dan shall be a serpent by the way, an adder in the path, that biteth the horse heel, so that his rider shall fall backwards. The first object to which Dan is likened is definitely stated to be a serpent. The second is implied, being mentioned in relation to the first. It is a horse, or a horse and a rider. The horse usually being white. Later in Deuteronomy 33:22, Moses likened Dan to a lion, as this lion was secondary emblem only and the same as Judah's official emblem. It was never used. Consequently, the serpent and the white horse remain the emblems of the tribe of Dan. Then we got 2 emblems here. It says the tribe of Naphtali and then the tribe of Gad on the right here. Naphtali, the blessing of Naphtali is short and promises him nothing. As recorded in verse 21, it says, Naphtali is a hind let loose. He giveth godly words. Naphtali is here likened to a freed hind, and so his emblem became a leaping hind. Or is that like a deer? This was Naphtali's official emblem as used in the ancient Israel. However, there are some indications that in the course of time, this female deer was gradually replaced by the male, so that today a stag is the equivalent of Naphtali's emblem, the hind. The blessing of God, as recorded in verse 19, is also very short. It simply says, God, a troop shall overcome him, but he shall overcome at the last. This does not promise him very much in material sense, but it does show a definite relationship between him and a troop of horsemen. Then in Deuteronomy 33:20, Moses likens Gad to a lion, as in the case of Dan, and for the same reason, this lion to which Moses likened Gad was never used, leaving him with one usable emblem, a troop of horsemen. However, as a troop of horsemen would be difficult to portray on an ensign, Gad emblem was usually shown as the mounted leader of the troop, holding aloft a pennant. And then we got the tribe of Asher here, that's on the left, and the tribe of Issachar. You see that? It says Asher, though short, the blessing of Asher does promise him some pleasant things, as we read in verse 20. Out of Asher his bread shall be fat, and he shall yield royal dainties. Just what is meant by royal dainties is uncertain, but in that day it seems likely that they would include wine, and this would require a cup of some similar vessel to put it in. From this came Asher's emblem, a covered cup or goblet. Issachar. The blessing given to Issachar is recorded in verse 14. Of him it states, Issachar is a strong ass, couching down between 2 burdens. Here we see that the animal to which he is likened and which became the emblem of the tribe descended from him was a laden ass. Then we got here the tribe of Zebulon, and it says here tribe of Manasseh. So Zebulon, you got a ship on the left here. Then you got Manasseh. So Manasseh, right? We go with Zebulon first. So Zebulon, the blessing given to Zebulon is recorded in verse 13. It says, Zebulon shall dwell at the haven of the sea, and he shall be for an haven of ships, and his border shall be unto Sidon. Although this does not actually liken him to any animal or object, it certainly relates him to a haven or harbor and to a ship traffic, and thus to ships, as it would be difficult to picture either a harbor or ship traffic on an ensign or banner. The alternative was to represent Zebulon as a ship, and so ship became the emblem of the tribe of Zebulon. Strangely enough, however, the territory allotted to the tribe of Zebulon in ancient Israel was inland. It had no harbor, and apparently did not touch the sea at any point. It would seem, therefore, that this blessing was prophetic of some future time, after Zebulon had left Palestine. And then we go into Joseph. We just saw Manasseh, remember? Out of Joseph came Ephraim and Manasseh. That's where you get the split, and you get 13 tribes now. The blessing goes on to Ephraim and Manasseh. And considering the blessing given to Joseph, we must remember that his descendants were divided into 2 tribes, bearing the names of his 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. Consequently, the blessing given to Joseph was in part inherited by both of these tribes and in part divided between them. The part of the blessing which concerns our study is recorded in verses 22-24, where we read, Joseph is a fruitful bowl, even a fruitful bowl by a well, whose branches run over the wall. The archers have sorely grieved him, and shot at him, and hated him. But his bow abode in strength, the arms of his hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty Creator of Jacob. Joseph is here likened to a bow or branch, which in view of other statements in the Bible referring to Israel as an olive tree, has always been understood to be an olive branch. In the next verse, enemy archers are said to shoot at Joseph, and as archers shoot arrows, it follows that there is an implied relationship between him and some arrows. Later, in his blessing of the descendants of Joseph, Moses said, his glory is like the firstlings of his bullock, and his horns are like the horns of unicorns. With them he shall push the people together to the ends of the earth, and they are the 10,000s of Ephraim and the 10,000s of Manasseh. Here Joseph is likened to an ox and to a unicorn. We should also note the repetition of and emphasis on the word horns. In the blessing given by Moses, therefore, we see that Joseph is likened or related to an ox, a unicorn, and a horn. When these are added to things to which he is likened in the blessing given him by his father Jacob, we see that Joseph is likened or related to an olive branch, some arrows, an ox, a unicorn, and a horn. All right, let me just show these real quick up here. As you guys can see, tribe of Ephraim. These were then inherited by and divided between Joseph's two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, with the ox, the unicorn, and the horn becoming the emblems of the tribe of Ephraim, and the olive branch and a bundle of arrows, the emblem of the tribe of Manasseh. So you got the secondary emblem of Ephraim, the horn, right? And now we got the tribe of Benjamin, which is a wolf, usually. So Benjamin, and blessing Benjamin, the youngest of his sons, Jacob said, as recorded in verse 27, Benjamin shall raven as a wolf. In the morning he shall devour the prey, and at night he shall divide the spoil. In this blessing, Benjamin is definitely likened to a wolf, and so a wolf became the emblem of Benjamin and of the tribe descended from him. In considering the various animals, objects, and other things mentioned in Jacob's prophetic blessings of his sons, it is important to note that while each of them was likened or related to some one animal or object, or to some personal characteristic, which then became his official emblem, some of them were likened or related to more than one. Consequently, some of the tribes had only one emblem, while others had two or more. These are listed below. And it says here the emblems of the 12 tribes. All right, so I got a list again. Take a look, pause it if you like. Continuing further ahead, he says, the amazing thing is that of these 22 tribal emblems of ancient Israel, at least 19 are, or until very recently have been, emblems of one or another section of the Celto-Saxon people. As history records few, if any, instances of a family, tribe, or people willfully adopting the emblem of anyone else as their own, it follows that if we find a people using one of Israel's tribal emblems today, it is certainly possible that they are, at least in part, descendants of lost Israel. If, however, we find a people using two or three of these emblems, their Israelite origin becomes something more than a possibility. But if we find a people or group of related peoples using nearly all of these emblems, and that they have done so as far back as their historical records and legends go, then their Israelite origin is no longer just a possibility or even a probability. It is a certainty. With this in mind, let us consider the evidence presented in the next chapter. This book is called Symbols of Our Celto-Saxon Heritage by W.H. Bennett. We'll continue to chapter 7. It says here the tribal emblems, part 2. And turning to the heraldry for proof of the Israelite origin of the Celto-Saxon people. We do not claim that all of the Israel emblems in use by the Celto-Saxons today have been in continuous use since the days of ancient Israel. The use of some of them may have lapsed for a time, only to come into use again at a later date. Some others, especially those granted in modern times to towns and cities, though identical with an Israel emblem, were actually designed to symbolize some local legend, event, or industry. Yet this does not alter the fact that these emblems are identical with the tribal emblems of ancient Israel. Neither does it lessen their value, as evidence for the first verse of Genesis 49 definitely states that Jacob's blessing of his sons was prophetic. And Jacob called unto his sons, and said, Gather yourselves together, that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days. Alright, so again, the whole blessing that he gave each of his sons and their emblems, right, what they became, this blessing was to be completely fulfilled only in the last days. Consequently, we could not expect all of these emblems to be in use until now. And that fact that there may have been a time when some of them were not used, or used only as local or family emblem, has no bearing on the matter. The important thing is that they are being used now, just as Jacob's prophetic blessing indicated that they would be. With this in mind, let us begin our search for a people, or a group of related peoples, whose emblems are the emblems of ancient Israel. In considering the evidence presented in the following pages, it should be understood that we are not here concerned with the intricacies and niceties of heraldic forms and usage. These are a comparatively modern innovation which has only a limited bearing on our subject. Our interest is in the emblems themselves, not in the many variations and forms in which they appear in modern heraldry. It should be noted too that in presenting evidence of the use of Israel's emblems today, we have only scratched the surface. In the provincial, municipal, institutional, and family emblems of the countries mentioned, there are many hundreds of other instances of the use of the emblems of ancient Israel, which we had neither the time nor the space to include. All right, very important saying, hey man, this is just scratching the surface here. And again, they're going to go over some of the emblems. The tribe of Reuben, we got this, is the man, that's the hijack. Says we do not have far to seek, for this emblem is in use today by several branches of the Celto-Saxon people. All right, Reuben has a man as an emblem, and also many branches of the Celto-Saxon people, they're saying. It is prominent emblem in the royal arms of Denmark and Greece. It holds an important place in the arms of Iceland. It is the emblem of the province of Lapland in Sweden. As a municipal emblem in Denmark, it appears in the arms of Odense, Hobro, Alestrup, Nyborg, and Copenhagen. In the Netherlands, it appears in the arms of Bergen, Op Zoom, Anlu, Halveti, Slien, Oosterhuisland, and at least 18 other municipalities. Further, a man was the emblem on the banner under which King Harold or England fought and lost the Battle of Hastings, and it also appears as a supporter in the arms of at least 17 of the chiefs of the Scottish clans in the crest of 4 others. Reuben's secondary emblem, a body of water, represented by wavy lines of bars, is a very common emblem among the Celto-Saxon peoples. It appears in the arms of 50 or more towns and counties in the British Isles alone, in addition to those several of the Scottish clan chieftains. It is the emblem of the province of Medelpad in Sweden, and it also appears in the arms of the province of Zeeland, and in those of at least 10 municipal emblems in the Netherlands. In Denmark, it appears in the arms of the districts of Sorel, Tonder, and Randers, and in those of more than 30 cities and towns. So here again is an example of the waves of Reuben, the other emblem secondary. We also got Simeon, the primary emblem, the sword, and the castle, right, or the gate, the fortress. It says here the tribe of Simeon. Simeon's primarily emblem, a sword, is also a very common one in some parts of Celto-Saxondom. It appears in the arms of many of the counties, towns, and cities of Britain and Ireland. Among them are Ballinasloe, Bath, Chatham, Cheshire, Connacht, Droitwich, Dumfries, Durham, Essex, Irvine, Kincardine, London, Middlesex, and Perth. It also appears in the arms of 14 or more of the chiefs of the clans and ancient families of Scotland: Barclay, Clan Ronald, Elliot, Farquharson, Gunn, Guthrie, MacFarlane, MacGregor, Macmillan, Matheson, Skene, Scrimgeour, Spalding, and Wallace. Among the Celto-Saxons on the continent, a sword is held in the right paw of the lion, on the shield in the royal arms of the Netherlands, and it is also one of the emblems of the city of Haarlem and at least 20 other municipalities. In Sweden, it is a part of the emblem of the province of Bohuslän. And in Denmark, it appears in the arms of the district of Benra and in the municipal arms of Horjorden, Fredericia, Skanderup, Steilen, and Gif. All right. So real quick, they have these nice emblems here in color. Just to take a look at them. You know, sword with the castle in the water. That's almost like saying Simeon and Reuben together, right? And then we got other ones right here again. I'm starting to be able to understand some of these, right? So Dan and Reuben, Oxford, Buxton, and Earldom of Menteith. Simeon's secondary emblem, a castle gate, is also used widely among the Celto-Saxons. In one form or another, it appears in the arms of at least 50 places in the British Isles. Among these are cities and towns including Winchester, Exeter, Swansea, Carmarthen, Dunbar, Civic, Plymouth, Bedford, Doncaster, Northampton, Newcastle, Wigan, Edinburgh, Stirling, Aberdeen, Limerick, Carlow, Athy, Tralee, Dublin, Londonderry, Ballymena, Drogheda, Dungannon, and Carrickfergus. In the heraldry of the clans and ancient families of Scotland, this towered castle gate appears either in the arms or the crest of the following: Lord Elphinstone, Mackinnon of Mackinnon, MacLachlan, Maclean of Duard, Macleod of Macleod, Macnaghten of Dundaravi, Macneil of Barra, Macquarie of Ulva, the captain of Clanranald, Malcolm of Poltalloch, and Spalding of Ashintully. When we turn to the heraldry of the Netherlands, we find this towered castle gate in the municipal arms of Middelburg, Elburg, Gorinchem, Oudenburg, Outwater, Outdorp, Altmar, Wishtenes, Montfort, Rennen, Switlauren, Leerdam, and more than 40 other places. In Denmark, it appears in the district arms of Hiding and Ribe and in the municipal arms of at least 17 other cities and towns. Perhaps, too, we should note that it was the emblem of the old kingdom of Castile in Spain. Now we get what? The lion, and of course, you guys already know, tribe of Judah. As indicated in Genesis 49:9, the emblem of the tribe of Judah was a lion, in a couchant or dormant position, and usually shown as tawny in color. This is undoubtedly the original posture and color, although there is some evidence that at a later date, some sections of the tribe used the lion in a rampant position and in different colors. Later on in our study, we will see that the color and posture of the lion does have some importance, but for the present, we are concerned only with the fact that the emblem of the tribe of Judah was a lion. Keeping in mind that the purpose of heraldry is to identify and to prove continuity, let us note that the lion in one posture or another is an emblem common to nearly all sections of the Celto-Saxon people. Okay. Let me go back. We kind of skipped over this. I wanted to show these tribal emblems again. They're pretty nice in color here. And now we see the swords. You guys know again, that's Simeon, the gate, Simeon, the waters, Reuben. Now we got the lion with the sword, Simeon and Judah. So, I don't know if I'm saying it right, but then we got Zebulon, we got Dan or Judah. That's what I'm just trying to guess, trying to read it. It appears in their royal and national arms, in their provincial and municipal arms, and in the arms of hundreds of their old families. This is particularly true of the Netherlands, where a lion appears in the arms of 9 of the 11 provinces and in the emblems of hundreds of its municipal arms. As a national emblem, however, it is peculiarly the symbol of Britain, as we see in the cartoon reproduced from a newspaper of some 30 years ago. Nevertheless, it is not exclusively a British emblem, for it also appears in the arms of England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, Canada, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Denmark, the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg, as well as in the emblems of many of their provinces and cities. So real quick, just to go back, all right, make sure you guys see all the emblems. MacLachlan, Ballymena, Clanranald are again the sword, the hand, the castle. All this means something coming together, different tribes. The heraldry. Remember, Reuben is the water, Judah. And we got the X, right? Just we were like the Confederate flag, or like the flag of Scotland. The sons of Arphaxad. Remember my Ireland of Chaldea videos. You got that red hand here. This is the line of Sarah. with the scarlet thread, with the castle of Simeon. Pretty cool when you kind of understand what it's trying to say to you. The symbolism, right? While Judah's primary emblem, the lion, was originally portrayed in a couchant position and later as rampant, neither of these postures could be used for the three lions of Judah. Second emblem, because of the difficulty of portraying three lions either couchant or rampant on an ensign or a narrow shield. Consequently, they had to be shown as passing one above another. This, too, is an emblem common to several sections of the Celto-Saxon people. It is the national emblem of both England and Denmark. In Britain, it appears on the royal standard and on the shield of the royal arms. It is also the chief emblem in the arms of Appleby, Chester, Dorset, Great Yarmouth, Hereford, Sandwich, and Hastings, and also of Jersey and Guernsey. In Ireland, it appears in the arms of Drogheda, and in Denmark, it is a part of both the royal and the national arms, and also in the municipal arms of Ribe. In the Netherlands, it is the municipal emblem of Veen. Okay, so before we continue, just want to go back. Got some emblems here again, the tribal emblems, the three lions. We know that represents Judah. So England and Denmark right here. And down the bottom, we got Chester and Sandwich. Here we got a couple horses. Remember, the horse, I believe Dan was a horse. And in the bottom right here, we have hillside horses in Britain. Remember, these are in the ground. Judah's third emblem, the scepter, was never used as an emblem of the tribe as a whole. It came into use only after the establishment of the monarchy when David, a prince of the tribe of Judah, became king of Israel. All right, who was Prester John. As an emblem, its use was restricted to him and to the reigning head of the royal family descended from him. This will be considered in a later chapter. But in the meantime, perhaps we should note that a scepter holds an important place in the coronation ceremony of our British sovereigns. All right, so we continue. We got here the primary emblem of Dan and the secondary, the horse, all Dan. It says here the tribe of Dan. While the serpent, the official emblem of the tribe of Dan, seems to have been largely superseded by his secondary emblem, a horse, and does not appear in the national arms of Britain or those of the other Celto-Saxon nations. Nevertheless, it does appear as a local emblem in some places and also in the arms of some old families. Even though not generally used, it evidently had a strong attachment for many Celto-Saxons, for it appears in the arms of Buxton and Barrow-in-Furness in England, in the crest of Livingston, Earl of Linlithgow, and those of chiefs of the Robertson and Morrison clans in Scotland. In the Netherlands, it appears in at least 20 municipal arms. When the newly formed United States of America was choosing a national emblem, the serpent was a serious contender for the position, eventually given to the eagle. Further, the serpent was the official emblem of several of the military and naval units of the United States Revolutionary Forces, all right? A real quick go back, all right? This is an example of an emblem right here. Again, Dan, and we see the waters, Reuben, Dan and Reuben coming together, huh? All right, Dan right here being held by the man, wasn't the man Reuben? So, that's the hijack with their whitewashing eventually. But yeah, so this is just some good examples right here. And as you guys can see, liberty or death, don't tread on me. All right, what is that? The snake, right? That's Dan. Don't tread on me. Dan's secondary emblem, a horse, usually pictured as white and sometimes with a rider, was a favorite emblem of the Saxons long before their invasion of Britain. This is shown by the fact that a horse is still the emblem of several sections of the Celto-Saxons in Europe, those whose ancestors did not move on into Britain with the main body. In Denmark, a white horse appears on the shield in the royal arms and in the municipal arms of Horsens, Holstebro, Austenborg, and a red one in those of Frederik Borg's Slotsong. In the Netherlands, a horse appears on the shield or as a supporter in the arms of Assendel, Kukarspel, Westerbork, Zuidlaren, Barn, Renkum, Werkhoven, and several others. It is also the emblem of several of the former German principalities and of Lithuania. In England, it is the emblem of the county of Kent, and it also appears in the arms of Ramsgate and Margate. Then there are the ancient white horses cut into the turf on the hillsides in several parts of England. In Scotland, a white horse is a part of the official emblem of Jedburgh, and also appears on the crest of Cochrane, Earl of Dundonald. Dunbar of Moghram, Hepburn, Earl of Bothwell, Trotter of Catchura, and as supporters in the arms of the chief of the clan Cummin, that the northern wing of the great Saxon migration across Europe did use Dan's emblem, a serpent and a horse is evidenced by a plate or plaque from an ancient ship burial somewhere between the years AD 600 to 900 near Stockholm, Sweden. This is now in the Stockholm Museum. This information comes from The King's Beasts and Heroes by Gwyn Jones, published by Oxford University Press in 1972. All right, so we got now the tribe of Asher. And remember, it was this precious cup. As we saw in the previous chapter, the emblem of the tribe of Asher was a cup or goblet, usually shown with a cover. While it is true that this emblem is not as widely used among the Celto-Saxons as some of Israel's other tribal emblems, it still appears in some places. In England, it appears in the arms of Barnsley and Warrington, and in a number of family arms in several parts of the British Isles. In Scotland, it is a prominent feature in the arms of Greenock and Paisley, and also in the arms of Carnegie, Earl of Soustes, and of Shaw of Sochi. All right, real quick, some other emblems here in color so you guys can see. And here's the urn and the cup. That's Asher. Now you guys know. Here we got like an eagle and a cup, almost snake eagle. That's like Dan, and some ships, Zebulon. So they all mean something, right? We continue. It says here the tribe of Zebulon. Zebulon's emblem, a ship, is a very common one in some parts of Celto-Saxondom. It is the ancient emblem of Holland, and in various forms it appears in the emblems of at least 18 places in England and Wales, Cambridge, Chatham, Devon, Hastings, Ipswich, Jarrow, Lincoln, Lindsay, Manchester, Margate, Middlesbrough, Morecambe, Ramsgate, Sandwich, Scarborough, Southport, Torquay, Truro, and Wallasey. It also appears in the emblems of 19 places in Scotland and in the arms of more than 20 of Scotland's ancient families and clan chiefs: Argyll, Burntisland, Bute, Caithness, Campbelltown, Greenock, Inverness, Kirkwall, Largs, North Berwick, Oban, Orkney, Queensferry, Renfrew, Rothesay, Rutherglen, Stranrawer, Wick, Setland, Campbell, Clan Chatan, all right, the Cat Clan, Clan Chatan, Chatan, Clan Ronald, Gon of Killernon, Hamilton, McAllister, McBain, MacDonald, MacDougall, MacDougall, McPhee, McGivory, all right, McGivory, McLean, McKinnon, McLaurin, McLaughlin, McLean, McNeil, McPherson, all right, McPherson, Menteith, and Shaw of Rothiemurchus, all right, again, Zebulon, they had the ship in their crest. There are also ships in the emblems of at least 10 of the more important places in Ireland and in Denmark. A ship is in the central figure in the arms of the districts of Swedenborg and Holbach, and it also appears in the municipal arms of 10 other places. In the Netherlands, there are at least 11 places in whose arms this emblem appears. All right, and here's some examples. All right, the ship is Zebulon, guys. And the Earldom of Caithness on the top, Lordship of the Isles and Campbell. Clan Chatan has the ship, you guys should know, Zebulon. And over here in the bottom, MacDonald on the right. McPherson, shout out to Katrina, you see, Zebulon. Some more emblems right here. Clan Ronald, MacLean, and MacLaughlin. So symbolizing a lot in the Clan Ronald, all these families, like see the mixture. And we got some more here, the County of Oxford, County of Cumberland, and Dowsland. So we're going to talk about the ox probably. And yeah, we're talking about the ox. We got Ephraim, right? Ephraim is the primary emblem, is the ox. The secondary is the unicorn. Yeah, the unicorn, the tribe of Ephraim. An ox or bull. The emblem of the tribe of Ephraim was the emblem of an important section of the Saxon people during their long trek across Europe from the east. The sons of Isaac, Saxon people, right? It is still in use today as one of the principal items in the national emblem of Iceland, and in Denmark, it is the emblem of the district of Aalborg, and the municipal emblem of Rodovry, Tyrstrup, Both, and Dalby. In Scottish heraldry, it appears in the crest of the Macleod of Macleod, while in England a folk memory of its former use is retained in the nickname John Bull, and as an actual emblem it appears in the arms of the counties of Cumberland, Hereford, Lincoln, Lindsey, and Inverness, and of the county of the city of Oxford. It is also the official emblem of the province of Dalsland in Sweden. Ephraim's secondary emblem, the unicorn, holds a very important place in the heraldry of the Celto-Saxon peoples. It is one of the two supporters in the royal arms of Britain. In the arms of Scotland, both supporters are unicorns, and it also appears in the arms of Preston of Crickmillar, on the crest of Ramsay, Earl of Dalhousie, Cunningham, Earl of Glencairn, Lord Oliphant, and as supporters in the arms of the chief of the clan Stewart. Further, it is an emblem of Horn and of Menel Dumadil in the Netherlands. As we saw in the previous chapter, special emphasis was laid on a horn in the blessing given by Moses to the tribe of Ephraim. While we have no evidence that this was ever used as an official emblem of Ephraim in ancient Israel, it would nevertheless be remembered and undoubtedly used at times by some sections of the tribe. Today, a horn appears in the arms of Blackburn, Bradford, Harrogate, Roxburgh, Ripon, and Wallasey in England, and in the arms of at least three of the Scottish chieftains, Burnet of Lace, Hunter of Hunterstone, and Lord Sempill. In Denmark, it is the feature of the municipal arms of Tikep, Tornslunde, Ishosh, Dem, Stambay, Farso, and Skibi. And in the Netherlands, it appears on the shields in the arms of the province of Limburg and in the municipal arms of Udel, Eindhoven, Lende, Hoorn, Vollenhof, Bigden, Highland, Dentelord, and at least 16 others. Further, a real horn was a prominent place in the history of Yorkshire, and especially at York Minster. At some time in the 8th century, a Saxon, a son of Isaac, Danish, who might be a little Danite, nobleman of Yorkshire, gave a tract of land to the authorities of the ancient church which stood on the present site of York Minster, and the deed by which he conveyed this property to it was a horn filled with wine. Though 1,200 years have passed since then, this horn is still kept in York Minster, and this writer has had the privilege of examining it. Certainly, it is very old, and certainly, too, it did not come from any animal of Britain. So where's the horns and the rams in America, right? Where's the original horn they were using? It's coming from America. All these biblical animals and ancient Egyptian god animals, yeah, all American species. But the writer cannot accept the story that it came from Persia and that it was used there in the ritual of some ancient religion, right? It didn't come from the Middle East. On the contrary, the available evidence clearly points to an Israelitish origin from the true promised land. Before considering this evidence, let us note that in a time when written and registered deeds were almost, if not entirely, unknown, any transfer of valuable property would have to be accompanied by some token or symbol which would be recognized and accepted by the donors, heirs, and family as proof of the transfer of ownership. Thus, in the gift of this property to York Minster, the most convincing of all possible symbols would be some ancient and well-known family heirloom. In this case, it seems evident that the symbol used was a horn which the noblemen's ancestors had brought from their old home on the continent when they came to invade and settle in Britain a century or two previously. All right, so going back, just want to show this again, the unicorn, Ephraim, and some of the emblems, they descend from Ephraim. So you see some more right here, the horn. We should also consider the possibility that this horn was in itself an object of great value, an ancient and sacred relic, and that in that troubled time when neither life nor possessions were safe, be that as it may, any careful examination of the horn will reveal evidence which clearly points to an Israelitish origin. First is the fact that a horn was one of the emblems of the tribe of Ephraim. Then, when this horn was presented to Minster, it was full of wine, and as we saw in the preceding chapter, wine holds an important place among the objects mentioned by Jacob in the blessing of his son Judah and his descendants. So in the horn and the wine we have two emblems, one of the tribe of Ephraim and one of the tribe of Judah. Only to an Israelite, and especially to members of the tribes of Ephraim and Judah, would these symbols have any meaning. The horn itself is that of some large animal, and is about 20 inches in length slightly curved and increasing from the tip to about 5-6 inches in diameter at the base. Around this base there is a carving depicting a vine and two figures which appear to be a lion and a unicorn. Here too we have Israel emblems. For both the horn itself and the unicorn carved on it are emblems of the tribe of Ephraim, and the lion and the vine are emblems of the tribe of Judah. All right, and again, some examples because you didn't see it. Perhaps even more significant is the fact when the Israel people, or the 12 tribes, right, the sons of Jacob, were divided into two separate nations, the house and kingdom of Israel and the house and kingdom of Judah. The emblems of these two nations were a lion and a unicorn. Thus, in addition to the tribal emblems already mentioned, the horn bears the emblems of the two nations into which the Israel people were divided after the death of King Solomon. As authorities are in general agreement as to the eastern origin of this horn, and as a horn engraved with these emblems would mean nothing to anyone except an Israelite, the only logical conclusion is that the Saxons who brought it from the east and on into Britain must have been the descendants of Israel people who migrated north and westward into Europe after they were freed from captivity by the fall of the Assyrian Empire. All right, so remember, Saxons or sons of Isaac. Isaac is the father of Jacob. Then we got Benjamin, the tribe of Benjamin, again, the wolf. In considering the wolf as the emblem of Benjamin, we should remember that after the division of the 12 tribes into two nations, the tribe of Benjamin was so closely tied to the much larger tribe of Judah, and for so long a time that its own identity was partially obscured. Further, during the nearly 400 years that these two tribes, Judah and Benjamin, formed the kingdom of Judah, the national emblem of the kingdom was the Lion of Judah. Consequently, the wolf was seldom used and in time became more of a tribal memory than a used emblem. However, there is some evidence which suggests that among the Norsemen, the people who formed the northern wing of the Saxon migration across Europe, there were some who used the wolf as an emblem. Many of these settled in Scandinavia, giving their name to Norway and later to Normandy in France. So far, this writer has been unable to check the accuracy of the claim that the emblem of the Norsemen who invaded and settled in France was a wolf, and that some of their descendants, the Norman invaders of England, also had the wolf as their emblem. However, according to an item of the research department of the British Israel World Federation, London, England, which appeared in the New Vision for July 1969, we read, "It is a matter of the greatest interest that Hugh Lupus, nephew of William the Conqueror," remember who William the Conqueror is? That's Milesius. Milesius is the dad of Eocoid Heremon, the guy who married Queen Tefi. I have the line of Sarah, yeah, and the Danite. Remember, let's not forget all that. So, Hugh Lupus, nephew of William the Conqueror, or Milesius, progenitor of the Milesians, right, used the wolf as his personal device at the time that heraldry was first introduced. We should also note the claim that Norway was about to give official recognition to the wolf as a racial emblem to its people just before the Germans took over the country in Second World War. All right, they were going to say, yo, we're the tribe of Benjamin. This claim is that a monument consisting of a column with a lion at the top and with its base guarded by four wolves was in process of preparation when the Germans struck. Though the wooden prototype of this column disappeared during the German occupation, a photograph of it was taken and is reproduced herewith. All right, this is the one they're talking about, all right, with the wolves in the bottom, Judah and Benjamin. Whoa. Wolf-guarded column. And again, symbols of our Celto-Saxon heritage, the book we've been reading. And again, Judah, Reuben, the man, right? So that's the idea with the whitewashing. Ephraim, the ox, Dan, the eagle. The Brigade emblems. Judah, Reuben, Ephraim, Dan. All right, we continue in the book, Symbols of Our Celto-Saxon Heritage. I'm in chapter 10 here, and it says here, the stone symbol. And we've already gone over this in part 1 and 2. We're talking about Jacob's pillow, the coronation stone, the stone of destiny, that all the old kings of Ireland, Scotland, and England eventually were crowned upon. This was something the Israelites carried traditionally, starting with Jacob. So it says here, among the objects used in that ancient ceremony by which we of the British race crown our sovereigns the coronation stone is unique. Though obviously essential to the ceremony, it has no actual value and no symbolic meaning is attributed to it. In fact, it is not even mentioned in the ceremony. From out of the distant past it has come down to us, silent and mysterious, an object of wonder and of awe. This sense of wonder is heightened by the fact that the jewel-studded regalia used in the ceremony has an enormous commercial value. The artistic and historic value of some of it is beyond price, yet valuable as these things are, they take second place, both in the coronation ceremony and in public interest, to that piece of rough and apparently valueless stone on which the sovereign sits for the actual crowning. Remember, they sit upon this rock, Jacob's pillow, they carried over from the true promised land. No doubt a desire to perpetuate an ancient custom could account for the continued use of this coronation stone. But this does not explain the origin of this custom, why this particular stone was chosen, or the veneration in which it has always been held by people of the British race. For these things there is no explanation unless we accept the tradition that this is the stone of Israel, which Jacob, father of the Israel people, used for a pillow on the occasion of his prophetic dream as recorded in Genesis 28, all right? So apart from the story of it being Jacob's pillow, there is no history, there is no stories about it. Nobody knows where the stone is coming from, other than the traditional story that is the stone of Israel, Jacob's pillow. According to this tradition, Jacob's descendants kept this stone as a sacred national treasure until when the Israel nation fell, its guardians fled with it to Ireland. Remember who brought it over? There for nearly 1,000 years, the kings of Ireland were crowned while seated upon it. It was then taken to Scotland and used for the same purpose until Edward I took it to Westminster, all right? So we got the whole breakdown in part 2. There can be no doubt that such a stone did exist in ancient Israel. As recorded in Genesis 28, Jacob used such a stone for a pillow, and in the morning set up as a pillar, anointed it with oil and called it God's house, or Bethel, right? Later, God reminds Jacob of this stone and calls him back to it. Thus, this stone was a witness to Hawa's promise to Jacob concerning the future of his descendants. It had heard his promise of great blessings, of lands and wealth and royal power, and of that special relationship to him, which they would have as the instrument of his will and purpose for mankind. It was the witness to an agreement of the tremendous importance to the Israel people, the title deed to an inheritance of great value. No wonder they kept it through the ages as a sacred national treasure. Here then is the real reason for our use of the coronation stone, and for the preeminent place which it holds among Britain's priceless treasures. Though still unrecognized by many, the fact is that the British peoples and nations, Celto, Saxondom, are Israel, and thus in this stone we have not only a witness to God's promise to us, but the tangible evidence of our special relationship to him. And here's a little drawing. Of course, it's saying from Egypt. What Egypt? The real ancient Egypt, right? To marry America, right? Brought to Ireland, then to Scotland, and then England. This is the chair they have the stone on. We've shown it on part 2. And of course, we got some more emblems. Again, Judah and Israel, the unicorn and the lion. So we continue in the book Symbols of Our Celto-Saxon Heritage by W.H. Bennett. And we're in chapter 12 here. And we're going to go over, again, the emblems of Sarah, Judah. Remember, this is all about the two lines of Judah, Pharez, and Sarah, the two sons. They had descendants. They eventually met up, united the lines, after Zedekiah killed the last male survivor of the Pharez line, which was the same line David comes out of. So only his daughters were alive from the Pharez line, who eventually made their way to Ireland and united with the sons of the line of Sarah, who were already in Ireland for a long time. And Jeremiah was the one who made this union, continuing the line of Judah, the line of David, and keeping the throne with Judah. Make sure to watch part 1 and 2 of this installment for the whole breakdown. As we have already noted, when Jacob Israel gave his dying blessing to his 12 sons, he associated each of them with some animal, object, or personal characteristic, which afterwards became the emblem of the family and tribe descended from him. Among these, the lion, the emblem of Jacob's fourth son, Judah, is of special interest. As we saw, the lion in a couchant position became the emblem of the tribe of Judah. Then, in a passive posture, It became the emblem of the camp or brigade of Judah, and later, with the addition of a crown of the royal house and throne of David, still later in a rampant posture and with a crown, it became the emblem of the two-tribe house and kingdom of Judah. Yet this lion, usually portrayed as tawny or golden in color, is not the only emblem of the descendants of Judah, or even the only lion. In the last 4 verses of the 30th chapter of Genesis, we find the record of the birth of twin sons to Jacob's fourth son, Judah. Here we read, "And it came to pass in the time of her travail that, behold, twins were in her womb." We're talking about Tamar, remember? That Tamar tricked Judah. She dressed up as a harlot because he had promised his youngest son to her and he never did. So by tricking Judah, Tamar had sexual relationships with Judah and she got pregnant by twins. "And it came to pass when she travailed that the one put out his hand, and the midwife took and bound upon his hand a scarlet thread, saying, This came out first." So that was Sarah. He had pulled out his hand. Remember the story, part 1 and 2. "And it came to pass, as he drew back his hand, that behold, his brother came out. And she said, How hast thou broken forth? This breach be upon thee." Therefore his name was called Pharez. So Sarah was already coming out, and what happened? His twin brother Pharez actually beat him and was born first. He breached out. So he made a breach in the royal line before they were even born. And remember that this breach was ended when Jeremiah united both lines together in Ireland. "And afterward came out his brother that had the scarlet thread upon his hand, and his name was called Sarah." So Sarah ended up coming out second. Even though his hand came out first, he was supposed to be the progenitor, the heir. We suggest that you read the above quotation again, for this is one of the most important events recorded in Bible history, and it gets swept under the rug a lot. The births of a great many other people are recorded in the Bible, but in this one case only are the details given. Why? Why is this birth singled out for such special attention? Surely, it is because this birth was a matter of great and special importance, and the details are recorded to emphasize that importance. Here we see the basis for serious family trouble. Though Judah had other and older sons, they could not inherit the prophetic promise that from his descendants would come the future royal family of the Israel nation, because they were the children of a forbidden union. Their mother was a Canaanite. All right? So that goes on to tell you that Tamar was really not a Canaanite. She has to be bloodline. And remember, they're talking about his union with Shua, the daughter of a Canaanite, who he had these children with that were killed because they were wicked. And eventually, again, Tamar had relations with him, so he had 2 children with her. So Tamar, in some way, is related to the Israelites. Thus, with the older of these 2 boys destined to be the ancestor of the future royal family of Israel, the question of which of them was born first, and therefore the heir, was a matter of the very greatest importance. In the record of the birth, as quoted above, we read that the hand of Sarah, or Sarah, appeared first, and that the midwife tied a scarlet cord around his wrist, saying, This came out first. Then we read that the hand was withdrawn, and that the birth of Pharez then took place. Here indeed was the seed of trouble. Which boy was the firstborn and therefore the heir? Sarah with the scarlet cord around his wrist, and the pronouncement, This came out first, or Pharez, whose birth was completed first? Eventually Pharez was declared the heir, and it is from him that the official branch of the tribe of Judah and the Davidic royal house are descended. All right, so David came out of this line of Pharez, and we forgot all about Sarah and his kids. They didn't inherit anything yet. What happened to them? We broke all this down in the last videos. They had left the Holy Land or Egypt long before the line of David or the line of Pharez. What then was the reaction of Sarah and his descendants to what they undoubtedly considered as being robbed of their rightful inheritance, right? There was a breach. They took their inheritance. That they did not accept this decision and that many of them left the rest of Israel during the time of the bondage in Egypt becomes evident when we consider the tribal genealogies as recorded in the Bible, right? They had bounced on them because they were like, you know what? You guys left us out. These records, the main lines of descent from Pharez, Judah, for a very long period of time. But the record of the descendants of Sarah, Judah, apparently ends with the 3rd generation. So basically, the descendants of Sarah completely got forgotten and it was not recorded what happened to them. As these genealogies, and especially those of the chief families in each tribe, were kept with great care, Any omission would indicate that those omitted were no longer in Israel when the record was made. As the genealogy of Sarah, Judah, apparently ceases with the third generation, it follows that most, if not all, of Sarah's descendants must have left Israel during the time of Israel's bondage in Egypt. I remember Israel's not a place. Israel's a people. Israel is Jacob's son. You mean they had left Canaan or the Holy Land, right? Israel's not a place, guys. Remember that. It's a family. It's Jacob's sons. They are the ones who are called Israel. It's not a landmass. And so he's saying, where did they go after they left? As descendants of Judah, their emblem was a lion. Even though bitterly resentful towards the rest of the tribe of Judah, it is very unlikely that they would give up this emblem of their identity and descent. So we may reasonably conclude that they kept the lion as their emblem. Nevertheless, they would have to change it in some way to show that, though they were descendants of Judah, they were entirely separate and distinct from the tribe of Judah and Israel. In their bitterness, they would want to make this difference as great as possible. And so instead of a tawny Celtian lion, they depicted theirs as both rampant and red. Thus, a rampant red lion became an emblem of the Sarah branch of the tribe of Judah. Okay, so this is what they're saying. When you see a red lion, is mainly the descendants of the line of Sarah from Judah, not Pharez. All right, Pharez usually has the tawny lion or him sitting down, lying down. This is Sarah's line, still Judah. Turning again to the birth of Judah's twin sons as recorded above, we see that the peculiar circumstances of this birth gave the descendants of Sarah another emblem. Note again in verse 28, and it came to pass when she travailed that one put out his hand, and the midwife took and bound upon his hand a scarlet thread, saying, this came out first. So this is where you get this red hand from. When you guys see this, that's what it means. Here we have an emblem which is absolutely unique, one which could apply to no one else, and one to which the record draws special and emphatic attention. A hand, red from the blood of birth, circled by a scarlet thread or cord, the scarlet thread, you see? In this unique way, a red hand or a red hand circled by a scarlet cord also became an emblem of the Sarah branch of the tribe of Judah. As we have already noted, the descendants of Sarah, Judah, or most of them, decided to leave the Holy Land and to flee out of Egypt, America, to some new land where they could establish independent kingdoms of their own. So again, remember, this happened way before Zedekiah was killed. Evidently, they could not agree on where to go, with the result that they divided into two or more groups, which then fled across the Mediterranean Sea in different directions. What Mediterranean Sea? You're talking about the Gulf of Mexico? Remember, the true old world. America is the true old world. One of these led by Sarah's great-grandson, Calcol. Remember Calcol, he's a progenitor of Heremon, fled westward to a land known today as Spain. Here they settled for a few years, during which they founded a city which still bears the name of their ancestor, Sarah, or Saragossa. All right, Saragossa is from the line of Sarah, descendants of Calcol, who eventually is the ancestor of Milesius, who was coming from Spain, right? Here we should remember that racially these descendants of Sarah were Hebrews, being descended through Abraham from Eber, or as it is in the New Testament, Heber. All right, that's the hijack. Wherever they went, they left this name like a footprint marking their journey. Thus, the river on the banks of which they founded the city of Saragossa is still called Ebro, and to the land itself they gave the name Iberia or Eber, right? The land of Heberi or Hebrews. All right, so Saragossa, you guys know, that's from Sarah. Later, Calco and at least some of the others left Iberia, moving on northward to the land we call Ireland. All right, so remember, they came from the Americas, ended up in the Iberian Peninsula, and went into Ireland. Again, they took their name with them, calling their new home Hiberland or Hibernia, and the islands to the north of it, the Hebrides. Then, with Calcol as their king, these descendants of Sarah, Judah, founded the kingdom of Ulster shortly after the year 1600 BC. Remember the Ulster plantation? And from that time until the present, a matter of nearly 3,600 years, the emblem of Ulster has been a red hand circled with a scarlet cord. Okay, that's where it comes from, guys. Further, 3 of Ulster's 6 counties, as well as the towns of Bangor and Dungannon, have the red hand as part of their official emblems. It is true, of course, that since the division of Ireland in 1920, the official arms of Northern Ireland show the red hand alone without the scarlet cord, but this does not alter the fact that the ancient and traditional emblem of Ulster was and still is a red hand circled by a scarlet cord. You can't deny that, and that's only found in the Bible when Sarah was born. So let's look at some examples again. The scarlet thread, the red hand. This is Sarah, the line of Sarah, you guys, okay? Originally a scarlet thread around it. So different versions of it. Okay, you see Sarah's hand all over it. The Tower of Simeon, a Lion of Judah. The top row says red hand and cord of Sarah, Judah, the arms of Northern Ireland. Then you got Antrim, Tyrone, and Londonderry again, and Dungannon. The red hand is there all over. Nevertheless, the use of the red hand as a racial emblem is not confined to Ulster or even to Ireland. In Scotland, it appears in the arms of several of the old families and in those of at least 14 of the clan chiefs: Davidson, MacBain, MacDougall, McIntosh, McKinnon, McIntosh, MacLean, MacLachlan, MacNeil, MacNaughton, MacPherson, MacGillery, MacDonald of Sleat, Clanronald, and Shaw of Rotimorchus. Color variants of this emblem appear in the arms of several other chiefs. All right, so a lot of the Shatan clan, right, has this emblem. A lot of these people mix with the Creeks, so-called Creeks of Georgia, right, and a lot of the eastern woodland tribes. Thus, by their use of the red hand, some of the people of Scotland also point to their Israelite origin as descendants of the Sarah branch of the tribe of Judah. Here, a most interesting question arises. How is it that the Scots, who invaded and settled the western part of what is now called Scotland in AD 501, have among their emblems one, the red hand, which is the same as the one which has been the emblem of Ulster since 1600 BC? There is very little, if anything, to indicate that the Scots came solely from Ulster. On the contrary, their own records state that they came from Scythia, which is the ancient name of the country to the west and north of the Caspian Sea. Thus, in the Register House in Edinburgh, there is an ancient document called Declaration of Arbroath, which consists of an official letter sent to the Pope by the Parliament of Scotland AD 1320 and signed by King Robert the Bruce and some 30 of the Scottish nobles, in which it is definitely stated that the Scots came from Scythia, that they lived for a long period of time in Spain, and that they moved on from there to a country now called Scotland, 1200 years after the outgoing of the people of Israel. It could be argued, of course, that this outgoing of the people of Israel referred to the exodus of Israel from Egypt. In support of this, perhaps we should note that a translation of the original documents made in 1703 reads above 1200 years after the coming of the Israelites out of Egypt. Here's some more emblems of Sarah, Judah. Okay, Tower, Lion, Zebulon. We got Reuben. We got a lot of tribes here represented. MacLachlan, MacPherson again, and MacDougall. So basically what he's saying is that these Scots never went to Ulster. They were in Spain just like the people who went to Ulster, but they must have split from Spain, and some went to Ireland and some went to Scotland. So real quick, just want to show you the arms of the government of Northern Ireland, all right? Again, with this hand of Sarah. All right, so we continue, says, with these things in mind, let us now turn to that other part of Sarah's descendants which fled out of Egypt, under the leadership of another of Sarah's great-grandsons called Darda. Now remember, he had Calco. Calco eventually was a progenitor of Milesius, the Milesians who ended up in Ireland, married Queen Tefi. He also had another son, as he's saying here, called Darda. We already went over who Darda is, remember? He founded the royal line of Troy. In the authorized version of the Bible, this name is spelled Dara, but in the margin, the alternative spelling is Darda, and the Jewish historian Josephus calls him Dardanus. This is significant because the group which he led went northward across the Mediterranean Sea to the northwest corner of what we now call Asia Minor. There, under the rule of Dardanus, they established a kingdom later called Troy on the southern shore of that narrow body of water which bears his name. To this day, Dardanelles. All right, Darda is the founder of the royal line of Troy. Yet Troy is Judah, guys. We went over this in parts 1 and 2. Some more emblems here real quick. Scotland, the red lion. Again, all this is Sarah. Red lion, the unicorn, Ephraim or Israel. The Stuarts, you see that? And then we got the earldom of Fife. So you see the Stuart emblem? Now you know what it means. Remember, Stuart is King James' last name. Some hundreds of years later, this kingdom was destroyed in a war with the Greeks. So-called Greeks, these were Danites they were beefing with. Some of the survivors fled northward into Europe, where their emblem, the rampant red lion, appears in the arms of some of the nations, provinces, and old families in the lands near or bordering the North Sea. Others fled westward across the Mediterranean to Spain and onto the British Isles, where, with some members of the other Israel tribes, they were the first settlers in much of what is now called Scotland. A larger group led by Prince Brutus, right? Future video on Brutus. Again, remember he was a Trojan. And this is the story of Brutus, a direct descendant of Dardanus, okay? He's Judah. He's of the line of Judah through Sarah, through Darda. He is Judah, Brutus, the famous legendary Brutus of England. Yes, he's the line of Judah through Sarah. After living in Italy for a time, also moved on through Spain to Britain, arriving here about the year 1100 BC. Though Britain had a considerable population long before the arrival of these Trojans, their coming and the setting up of this transplanted Trojan kingdom is the actual beginning of the British nation, all right? These are the people who really established the British nation. You see all these Israelites having to do with Judah and Sarah and Phares. And from that time until the coming of the Saxons into South Britain, so another of Israel's people, the Saxons or the sons of Isaac, eventually invaded the Trojans, these Israelites who had settled from Troy. So yeah, Israelite tribes were beefing amongst each other. This is actual history. So the Saxons came in 1600 years later after the Trojans. A rampant red lion was the emblem of all Britain. With the coming of the Saxons, its use in England as a national emblem was discontinued, being replaced by the emblems brought in by the Saxons and Normans. Nevertheless, in North Britain, Scotland, it is still the chief emblem, as we see in the pictures of the Scottish standards. All right, this is what we're just looking at. That many of the Scottish people are descended from Sarah, Judah, is also evident in their use of the rampant red lion as a clan and family emblem. Thus, an examination of the arms of the clan chiefs and other ancient families will show that at least 20 of them have the rampant red lion. A color variant of this emblem appears in several more: the Earldom of Fife, Abernethy, Lord Saltoun, Dundas, Duff, Farquharson, Guthrie, Hepburn, Earl of Bothwell, Leslie, Lindsay, MacBain, Macintosh, MacLauchlan, Clanronald, Maitland, Earl of Lauderdale, Moncrieff, MacDonald of Sleep, Shaw of Roty-Morchus, Spence of Latalan, Stewart, Marquis of Bute, and Wemyss. It is also important to notice that the rampant red lion appears on the royal standard and on the shield in the royal arms. Further, it was the ancestral emblem of the royal houses of several of the ancient principalities of Wales. Note the emblem of Bledin ap Cynfing, who died in 1075. A color variant of this emblem appears in the arms of several of the other ancient Welsh royal houses. Even in England, it, or a color variant of it, appears in a few municipal arms and in a much larger number of family arms. And again, the royal standard, flag, the harp, the lion, the red lion again. Important too is the fact that the rampant red lion emblem appears in the heraldry of the Netherlands, either on the shield or as a supporter in the provincial arms of South Holland, North Holland, Utrecht, Zeeland, Limburg, and Overijssel, and in the municipal arms of some 50 other places. In this chapter, we have presented evidence of the ancient usage of the red hand as the emblem of Ulster, and its use in much of the rest of Ireland and Scotland, and of the rampant red lion as the emblem of ancient Britain. What the reader may have overlooked, however, is that for at least 1,500 years before the coming of the Saxons into Britain, these two emblems of the Sarah branch of the Israelite tribe of Judah were the chief emblems of the British Isles, all right? This was it. Again, 1,500 years, that's a long time that Sarah was holding it down there before the so-called Saxons came, the sons of Isaac, which were more Israelites, Danites, who had mixed with some other people, right? Wherever they had gone. But they were there for 1,500. The red hand in Ireland and the rampant red lion in Britain. So here's an example of Eindhoven, Netherlands, right, with the horn. Remember the horn, the red lion, South Holland, all right? So it's there, the line of Sarah. And we continue in the book, Symbols of Our Celto-Saxon Heritage by W.H. Bennett. We're in chapter 14, And it says here, Israel emblems in the United States, more correlation in this book as well. We're going to read what it says here. It says, in a previous chapter dealing with the emblems on the standards of Israel's 4 brigades, we saw that the emblem of the Brigade of Dan was an eagle. That this was the emblem of the Danish Brigade is evident not only from ancient Jewish and Masonic traditions, but is also implied in the statements in Ezekiel 1:10 and Revelation 4:7. When we compare the picture presented in these two statements with the organizational arrangement and position of the brigade emblems in the camp of Israel, we have definite proof that the emblem on the standard of Dan was an eagle. In seeking to identify the Israel people today by their heraldic emblems, let us now seek a people or a part of people whose emblem is an eagle. The search does not take long, for when we turn to the national emblem of the United States, we see that its central figure is an eagle. Yet the use of Israel emblems by the United States does not end with the eagle. In our study of Israel's tribal emblems, we saw that the emblems of the tribe of Manasseh, again, were an olive branch and a bundle of arrows. This is inferred from the statement in Genesis 49, wherein Jacob, in blessing his sons, likened or related each of them to some object or animal, or to some personal characteristic, which afterwards became the heraldic emblem of the family. All right, so you guys remember that? That was the emblem of Manasseh, remember that? Olive branch and the arrows. An eagle is Dan. Another interesting point which arises here is that in order of precedence, Manasseh was the 13th tribe in Israel, right? 13 colonies, 13 stripes, 13 stars, 13 leaves, 13 arrows. You guys get it, right? In view of what is said in Genesis 48, it is evident that a general recognition of the relative position of the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh was necessary both then and for the future. To this end, the number 13 was indelibly included in the heraldry of the tribe of Manasseh. Having noted, therefore, that the emblems of the tribe of Manasseh were an olive branch, a bundle of arrows, and the number 13, let us now consider them in relation to the national emblems of the United States, as in illustrations 244 and 246. All right, we're going to see that. Here, clutching the right claw of the eagle, we see an olive branch, and in its left, a bundle of arrows. Then, as if to emphasize the importance of these two items of identification, we see that the olive branch has 13 leaves and 13 olives, and that there are 13 arrows in the left claw of the eagle. In addition, there are 13 bars on the shield, 13 stars in the circle above the eagle, and the words E pluribus unum contain 13 letters. Okay? E pluribus, and that means out of many one. So you see this 13 symbology. I know a lot of people try to use the Illuminati explanations, the Masonic explanations, but maybe they were trying to throw us away, giving us all this negative history and false misinterpretations of symbols. So we will never really know the origin of this stuff and what it means. So as you can see the table, again, Israel's 13 tribes, because remember, Joseph had 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, becoming 13 tribes. We see, therefore, that the 3 emblems of the tribe of Manasseh, the olive branch, the bundle of arrows, and the number 13, and the eagle of the 3-tribe Danish Brigade, are the central figures in the national emblem of the United States. In addition to their tribal and brigade emblems, the Israel people also had another emblem which belonged to them all, and which symbolized their relationship to Wah. This was the mysterious phenomenon called the pillar of cloud, which hung over the tabernacle at the center of the encampment, and preceded them in the march during the whole 40 years of their wandering after the exodus from Egypt. In the dry air of the Sinai wilderness and western Arabia, all right, touch the hijack. That's not what they were. This cloud would be visible for many miles. Would be, all right, he's guessing. Would be, he's just assuming they were there. And to a distant observer would indicate the presence of Israel, even though the encampment itself was not visible. That almost reminds me of like the Indian smoke signals, right? Smoke signals that become like clouds and you see it from far away. That's what this reminds me of. Consequently, this cloud was a symbol indicating the presence of the Israel people. Smoke signals, huh? As such, the use of this cloud as an emblem today is an important mark of identity, indicating that the nation which uses it is one of the Israel family of nations. With this in mind, let us note that this symbol holds an important place in the official heraldry of the United States. For there above the eagle, we see a circular cloud enclosed in 13 stars. In considering the use of this emblem by the United States, we should not overlook the form of the 13 stars inside the cloud. All right, and he's going to point out they look like the Star of David, right? That's the hijack a little bit, but you see the symbology behind this seal, right? So again, these stars are in the shape of a hexagon or six-pointed star, the outline of which is identical with the shield of David, noted in previous chapter. Now that became the shield of David, but David never used these symbols or Star of David. That was more a Caesarian thing, an integration later on. To recapitulate what we have seen so far in this chapter, let us again examine the emblem of the United States as shown in illustration 246. As we look at it, we see, first of all, that its central figure is the eagle of the Brigade of Dan. In the eagle's claws, we see the olive branch and the bundle of arrows, emblems of the tribe of Manasseh. Then we see that Manasseh's number 13 appears in the 13 leaves and the 13 olives on the olive branch, in the 13 bars on the shield, in the 13 arrows, in the 13 stars, in the circle above the eagle, and in the 13 letters in the words E pluribus unum. And at the top, we see a cloud, the emblem of all Israel and the symbol of Israel's relationship to Hawa. Finally, we see that the 13 stars in the cloud form the outline of the shield of David. Thus, by its official national emblem and by each item in it, the United States declares itself to be an Israel nation. Yet, though the evidence we have just considered is conclusive in itself, nevertheless, the heraldry of the United States has other items of great interest and importance. For a thorough understanding of this, let us again turn our thoughts back to the early days of the Israel family. Jacob had 12 sons, two of them, Joseph and Benjamin, born to him by the wife he loved, and the others by another wife and two concubines. Probably because he was favored by his father, Joseph was heartily disliked by his half-brothers, and this feeling was heightened by certain dreams which Joseph had in which his brothers were always in a subordinate position in relation to him. So it explains his dream that he had about his brothers, which he talks about a sun and a moon and 11 stars made of obeisance to me. All right, so this is where you get all that symbology. And I guess here where you see the faces of the moon, you guys see that? That's what they're talking about in this one. And the stars. The emphasis placed on the details of this dream is clear indication that we are indeed to notice its symbolism, and consequently that a symbol or emblem consisting of the sun, the moon, and a star for each of Israel's 13 tribes must be regarded as an emblem of Israel. Where then do we find a people or a section of a people using this emblem today? All right, so very important because remember we're telling you ancient Egypt was in America. To marry, we know Joseph was king of Egypt, Manasseh his son. This is all related to America, guys. That's what they're telling you. It's here. It was here. This is where they were coming from when they left Egypt. The evidence presented in this and previous chapters is irrefutable proof that the Celto-Saxon peoples are the continuation of ancient Israel. Among these peoples, Britain and the United States are undoubtedly the leaders, and consequently, we would expect to find the Israel symbol, the sun, the moon, and the 13 stars in the national emblem of one or both of them. But it does not appear in either. Yet this emblem is still with us. For when we turn to the emblems on the flag of the President of the United States and also on his seal, we find that the sun, the moon, the 13 stars hold a very prominent place among them. As we continue our study of the relationship between the emblems of ancient Israel and those of the United States, we should keep in mind that the 12 tribes, when encamped, were in the form of a square or circle with 3 tribes on each of its 4 sides, and that each of these groups of 3 tribes formed a separate unit called in the Bible a camp, but which, for the sake of clarity, we have referred to as a brigade. We also saw that one of the 3 tribes on each side of this square or circle was the leader, and that the name of this tribe then became the name of the camp or brigade. So we see that every item in the national emblem of the United States and in the official emblem of the president is an Israel emblem. There are no others, and consequently, by its use of them, the United States officially declares itself to be an Israel nation. And part of them moved on into the British Isles at least as early as 600 BC. This is only a little more than 100 years after the fall of northern 10-tribe kingdom of Israel by the Assyrians and the deportation of the survivors away northward to the lands between the Black and the Caspian Seas, where at this exact time the Celto-Saxons first appear in history. Perhaps here we should point out that in using the term Celto-Saxons, we are not speaking of 2 peoples but of one. Racially, they were all Saxons, but we speak of them as 2 because they arrived in Western Europe and in Britain at different times. The so-called Celts, Gauls, Cimbri, Belgi, etc. arrived first, and the Saxons, Jutes, Angles, Saxons, Danes, and Normans centuries later. The Celts and the Saxons were but 2 waves of the same people. Before going on with our search for Israel emblems in Europe, there is one about which the students should be especially careful. Example, the eagle. Now listen to this, all right? The double-headed eagle, so common in parts of Europe, is the ancient emblem of those people and nations descended from the age-old Babylonian Roman succession of empires, all right? It was almost like probably has something to do with Edomites hooking up with Judah, right? Edomites taking the eagle. Whereas the single-headed eagle was one of the important emblems of the Israel people, and especially of those descended from the three-tribe Brigade of Dan. Thus, the double-headed eagle is an indication that the people using it are not of Israel. All right, listen, that's a big one. The double head has nothing to do with them. Whereas the use of the single-headed eagle is evidence that the people using it are of Israel and probably of the tribe of or brigade of Dan. And that's a big one right there. Remember that the Roman Catholic, the Habsburgs, and all these people have the double eagle. Who are the Catholics? Who are the Edomites? Who's the Roman Empire? What did they do to the Israelite nations? Again, the double-headed eagle is not of Israel.
Robert Dre, Tracy Bye.